Welcome to the We Are VIP podcast. Each week, your host, Casey Hasten, Director of Recruiting at VIP, will bring you valuable insights from thought leaders, introduce you to incredible companies, and bring you tips for landing your dream job from our team of executive recruiters at VIP. And now, Casey Hasten.
Welcome to the We Are VIP podcast, a podcast devoted to adding value to your career or candidate search, brought to you by VIP. I'm your host, Casey Hasten. I'm an executive recruiter, director of recruiting with VIP, and your all-around hiring guru. And today I am super excited because we are recording our 100th episode. And so we are doing this with a panel of extraordinary experts to talk to you about the future of hiring. So let me introduce to you our panelists today. So first, we have Kent Billingsley, who is the author of Entrepreneur to Millionaire, and you also run a company called Revenue Growth Company. So your specialty is really just scaling those businesses and helping them grow. And then next we have Robin Fiddes, who is our guru when it comes to HR. She's the director of HR with Venture Metals and just an amazing HR person, going to talk to us about some of the trends that are coming up here in HR today. And then finally we have Juan Fernandez, who I've just recently met, and I'm just like intoxicated with his knowledge, but he is a Forbes council member, technology council member, and so he's here to talk to us a little bit today about what the future of hiring looks like when it comes to technology. So panelists, welcome to the We Are VIP podcast.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for being here on such a special occasion. You know, our studio's kind of gone all out today for us.
Great.
Yes. Yeah, and so because we're doing a panel today, we also have our live audience here with just a plethora of our clients and even our teammates and just everybody here to kind of help us celebrate as well and to also learn from you guys today. So one of the things I like to do when we first get started, because I think it's so important, and we were talking about this earlier, Juan, is I like to let the audience know how we get connected, because one of the things that's become so apparent to me, especially during this pandemic, is that it is so important to have a network and use a network, and you need to have that network before you need to use it, right? This is like the message that keeps coming back to me over and over and over again. So I'd like for each of you to share how we got connected and why you're here with us today on the We Are VIP. Kent, do you mind starting?
Yeah, I believe we met at Success North Dallas. I was giving the keynote speech about a month ago, and you came up to me afterwards and said, wow, let's talk and let's have a conversation around how do you scale up organizations, how do you create business wealth inside a company. So that's where we met, and I'm really excited about our future relationship working together. I am too. And so an interesting side note, Bill Wallace, who's the founder of Success North Dallas, was actually the first guest I recorded with. Oh, wow.
Yeah, and he totally flummoxed me because he took my notes and he looked at me and he goes, we're not doing any of this. And I'm like, it's my first show. You know? So that was a real interesting day for me, but we got through it. So Robin, how did we get connected?
So interestingly enough, at my previous employer, Joe and I had connected to form a relationship with that company. And then Joe had reached back out to me, and I actually had been laid off. And, we connected, and it was wonderful for me about who you know, right? Talking about networking, and that's how I met you.
Yep.
Because you came to my aid, which was very appreciated, but also a wonderful aid in getting me connected to the Who You Know network. So, and we've been connected ever since, and happy that you're working with me now, even more. So
I am too, and I believe so. A couple of things there, but I'm so glad that you connected with the Who You Know and that you found some service with them, because that's one thing we like to do at VIP is really not just be your only resource, but to provide you with other resources, and so that's been really a really good relationship. But I want to say thank you to you too, because you have been so good to help me, when I've been called to be on the news on HR topics, and I'm like, Robin, what do I say? And so a lot of the words y'all hear me saying on Good Morning Texas, that comes from Robin. So just so you know. And the person that introduced us, our business development manager, I just want to kind of call him out, Joe Nunez, because he's the one that heard your need and said, let me get you connected with a recruiter.
Right.
And so I think that that's so important that we're so, intent on building up those relationships at VIP, not just, when we can make $1, but when we truly want to help somebody.
And you can tell now that I've had the benefit of being actually on both sides of the relationship, there's the reason I continue to call you first, because of just that philosophy.
I love it. And it's across the board. That's pushed from the top down. So you'll get that with any of our recruiters or business development managers that you work with. So Juan, now you and I, even though you're local, we got connected from somebody way far away.
Way far away.
How did we get connected?
So we got connected, as technology shrinks the world, right, during the pandemic, everyone went virtual and everyone was on video. And I speak quite a bit in many different conferences. And I was chatting with a friend of mine and he said, you really got to meet this really special person.
Now, where does this friend live?
I believe he lives in Washington.
I think it's Connecticut, isn't it?
Connecticut.
Yeah.
You're right. And so he said, you got to meet her. This is an amazing person. You need to talk to her. And so when we connected, and then we hit it off and had an amazing conversation and connected on, we're both working on books.
Yep.
So that was an amazing opportunity. And so it was really an honor to meet you and really hear a lot about some of your thoughts and then also learn about your organization. So that's how we landed here.
I love it. And I just really think we have such a strong panel here today to give everybody some information about, the future of hiring and what it's going to look like. So I can't wait to get started. Are you guys ready?
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
So a recent study by Stanford of 16,000 workers showed that working from home actually increased productivity by 13%. And I can tell you I've seen that. I do not doubt that for a second. So as vaccination rates increase and COVID spread slows, what does this mean for returning to the workplace, and how are employers adapting to these changes in a way that benefits their businesses but also the employees? I think, and Robin, I think when we first started talking, you guys have some interesting things that you're doing as your people are coming back to work, or y'all have been at work the whole time, right?
We have. We're an essential business, so we didn't close a day. So we've maintained, and we've had to maintain on site because of the nature of our business. So we've had to be a little creative. We are in our corporate office in particular, like most corporate offices, a little bit of office space and a lot of cubicle world. So, trying to make sure that we were able to maintain the business, but maintain safe space. So, where the positions allowed, the staggering of schedules, if you could be here Monday, Wednesday, Friday, the person in the cubicle next to you would be here Tuesday, Thursday. We had, hired a cleaning crew who comes in twice a day. So,
oh, wow.
And we've kept that up. We found that it's interesting, and I think this probably bears out not just in our location, but I've seen other studies, our sickness rate has gone down. Like, we have much less absenteeism from sickness recently. So, interesting.
Wow.
One of the side effects is, I don't know anybody that had the flu this year, right? And so we don't have the common colds that, people are dealing with. Most of us, I think, in this room, I'm not from Texas, but the allergies here are a killer. But other than dealing with that, so just trying to space it out, keep, cleanliness is one of our priorities. And now as we're all coming back in, we are all coming back in. We're making sure that we have, again, still cleanliness. We are just talking about removing the masks, but right now we're still masked. If you're in a space where you can stay away, 6 feet, that social distance, you can be unmasked. However, most of us now are vaccinated, so we're talking about how we bring that coverage of the vaccine into, the workplace to allow for some more freedoms, to go unmasked and but still respect others who may not have an opportunity yet to be vaccinated, or maybe have some, particular personal beliefs about the vaccine. So we're working through it. It's on the table right now.
Interesting. And I love that you talk about that hybrid model, and I think we're hearing a lot of our clients that are going to that hybrid model just so that they can do the spacing and stuff like that. But also, in Juan, this is something I saw the other day. Whenever we go to like our networking event, there is this full-size thermometer that you walk up to, you put your forehead up to, and it tests you. And so, where does technology play a part in this?
I think it really proved that we can work from home. I think that the pandemic really showed that, as much as businesses had to mobilize and get home quickly, they realized that there was things that they could implement to do that safely. And it brought to light a lot of opportunities for organizations to realize that technology wasn't necessarily the thing that was holding them back. It was more of an internal culture or mindset that was really kind of doing some of that. And so now that we've proved that we can work from home, it's easy to see how the technology was there for us to adapt to this opportunity. And the work from anywhere model, I think, is really going to change businesses for the future. I think we're going to see a lot of the millennial market space that's going to require that hybrid learning or hybrid working environment, where they're going to have some sort of in-office and work from home scenario. And we see it in technology. Our primary objective is to mobilize companies to enable the remote workforce and implement the security that allows them to do such. And truth be told, we can do it in a way that allows them to freedom and autonomy to create that work-life balance that creates employee retention and allows them to actually really have a better quality of life. So I think for everybody that's here, yes, we love the fact we don't have to wear the mask, but also I'm sure everyone had that elation to know that I don't have to go to the office every day. And I think that for some, there is a structured aspect of I want to be in the office, but for many, I really started to enjoy being home, right? For me, I've been working from home for years, so it hasn't been a big shift for me, but now everyone, I think, is starting to see that there is a light there, so.
Well, and I think for a lot of people, at least a lot of the candidates that I talk to, they're, yes, they don't really want to go back to the office full time, but they miss that social interaction. And
I agree.
So I think that for me personally, that hybrid work model, I think, is what we're going to see coming out in the future. And you just wrote a book. So did you touch on any of this? What's your thoughts?
Yeah, there's a whole chapter on what I call talent optimization, which is how do you get the most out of your workforce without grinding them, killing them, and abusing them. But really, how do you identify talent versus just hiring employees? How do you identify talent? And then allow them to work together in whatever structure that makes sense. Based on the job design and the work and the production. I love remote for a lot of reasons, but it's got its downside. When we get into creativity, brainstorming, strategy work, that's really hard to do remotely. The other side of that, as a leader, I need sometimes to see the nonverbal actions. I need to be able to see everybody at one time to see how much of the group is picking up on a particular subject. I just left giving a presentation, and I really needed to see everybody in the room who was on board, who was connecting with the concepts, versus I knew they were present. So I like that we have flexibility in our models and people are learning to do that. We just need to understand the positives and the negatives to optimize those talent and allow them to work inside that system.
Well, and I think one thing I love, because I have a hybrid model with my office, but one thing I love is like when we're sitting, what we call our bullpen, because we're in sales, we're recruiters, right? And you hear somebody say something, and then somebody else plays off that, and somebody else plays off that. And I think that's really what builds that camaraderie, is that we're all just kind of listening into each other and then commenting. Even if you're on the phone, we comment sometimes. But I think that builds that camaraderie. So would you agree with that? That the hybrid model, I think, is here to stay?
I know for us it will be. I know we're moving to it. And I think the other thing, just not the camaraderie, but there's a benefit of being next to the decision makers that you work with. So, me being able to walk into my CEO's office across the hall and saying, hey, Mike, I have a thought, versus sending an email. We have so much more email now being remote, which is kind of the cutting, the other edge of the sword with it. So, trying to get the communication across when you can just walk across the hallway. So I'm happy to see that we'll maintain the hybrid. Like you said, it's a retention tool, but to be able to have that kind of immediate access would be great too.
In my opinion, let the situation or the objective drive the model, because parts of my career I've worked on the strategy side of business. It's very dynamic, it's very quick. There isn't time to schedule a Zoom call in 2 days. We got to make a call, we got to design the tactics to fit the goal or implement the strategy. We need to get people in the room, need to go down the hall, get authorization, we need to talk to this person right now. So I love that model in some cases based on workflow and job design, but other times it's an inhibitor and people need to be there physically, or at least even in the meetings have the hybrid where a few people can be on the Zoom or whatever platform, but you've got decision makers or people that can resource allocate inside the room to get things done, because any time that these models slow down or inhibit the ability to optimize or be successful, then it's a failure point.
Absolutely. And I just kind of wanted to go back to what you were saying about, having access to your decision makers. I'm sure I've got my managing partner sitting in the office today that they're probably glad I work from home 2 days. So I'm not, because when I'm in the office, I'm always like, hey, Mike, here, you just pop it into their doors. But they, it's great because they keep that open door policy for us. So, all right, so let's go back to technology for a second. So since the pandemic hit, the United States has added 14 million jobs to the economy. That's amazing. As recruiters, we've been busy getting people back to work as quickly as possible. Many of our clients use video interviews as part of their onboarding process. And I guess my question is, do you think that video interviews and other e-hiring practices have a place in the future?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I agree. I would say that that's probably the case. And as much as I am a people person, and I like you, love to read people and sit down with individuals that I'm hiring or I'm looking for styling cues. I'm looking for the way they speak. I'm looking for the way their body language reacts. I'm looking for everything when I'm interviewing somebody. You really can't pick that up as much over video. You can't see the nuances that are going on in the resolution of sitting in somebody's bedroom. There's so many things going on. There's a cat in the background. I mean, there's a lot of different things that are detractors from the interview process, if you ask me. So as much as I am for technology and moving forward and utilizing that medium, there is still something to be said to in-person interviews. Maybe that's just me being the way I am, but I do believe that it is here to stay.
Yes.
There's no because you got a workforce now that can be global, right? If you got a remote workforce availability, you can hire somebody across the globe now, and there's no way you're going to be able, from a cost perspective, to fly them in to get them in person. But for all intents and purposes, I still see a value in the in-person interview process. I mean, your thoughts?
No, I agree. We're going through that right now. As Casey knows, she's helping me with a search, and this is a COO position for us, so it's one of our chief officers, and we're able to look across the country now for candidates and have that initial connection, right, without having to bear the cost of a flight and hotel and all the other expense. At least to get to know initially, is it a great potential fit, and then we can go, okay, this moves to the next level or not, and depending on the level of position, I think we would use it more or less. For all the hourly workers in our plants, we don't do this at all. It's all in person, but staff level and up, we've kind of used it as a mixed model, a hybrid model.
Well, and I happen to work with a client that is actually onboarding or interviewing, virtually interviewing and onboarding 100% virtually. And they've done a fantastic job with that. So, and that may not be the model that everybody wants to use, but I think it can work for sure. But I have another question about the hiring tools and technology that might be used. And I think, Juan, this is something you might know about, but I read recently that there is a technology, it's a video technology that's come out, and I can't remember the name of it, and I apologize for that. But it's actually, you're not talking to a person, you're actually talking to AI. And as you're talking to AI, it's scanning your micro expressions. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I do know what it is. There's a lot of new technology that is being injected into the hiring process that surrounds artificial intelligence and reading facial features and mapping the body language of the potential candidate. This has been around for some time. It's been used a lot in test taking, electronic test taking mediums in the past, but never full-blown AI. Now they're starting to really look at using AI in these mediums, and there's a lot of problems still with it. It's not necessarily ready to go. There is a lot of unconscious biases that are placed on candidates because of the way they act. There's a lot of opportunities. Let's say that I have a nervous tic and I make certain movements whenever I'm having an interview. I'm not necessarily nervous, but AI may perceive me as such and then rank me in another way of candidate. So there are still things that need to be done there. And I think that's where I think technology separates itself from human element, is that we're a better judge of character than a computer can be at this particular moment. Not to say that it won't be in the future, but right now I think that it's just not quite there, but it is being experimented with it quite a bit.
Absolutely.
You know, on that note, and I've been building organizations for I don't know how many years, but I recommend to my clients, use all the data points that you can get. I mean, if you can use AI or whatever, or you screen them through a video conferencing tool, I recommend as many as you can get, and then put them together to help to stack rank which candidates make the most sense. The challenge is when companies rely too much on the AI or too much on the screening video or some of these other things, they don't look at the candidate holistically. And I'll just share with you, I've had candidates and watching employees, they were great on Zoom and they were masterful. Then they showed up late, they looked disheveled, they had an excuse why they couldn't find the office. I mean, all of a sudden it just started to take a dirt road. And if this company would have hired just on the video conferencing tool, it would have been a disaster. So holistically, look at the data points, use those that make sense, but don't gravitate too heavily toward any particular approach.
Yeah, you know what, and I'm so glad that you said that, because, you know, pre-pandemic, you know, as recruiters, our clients hire us to go find them talent. And I could not imagine a time when I would not meet a client or a candidate in person before presenting to my client. So that was a real mind shift for me to have to get to that point, because I knew I couldn't meet my candidates anymore and still trust to present them to the clients, because you learn so much about people when you meet them in person, and you know if they're going to be a fit for your client based on that interaction. That's so hard to tell over Zoom or just a phone call. So I couldn't agree with you more on that. So anything else as far as technology that you guys see coming up in the future that could transform the way that we hire?
I will say I've seen a lot of very interesting things. I'm always looking for the perfect fit. And since I'm in technology, I'm always looking to align people with their passion within technology. Because there's a lot of people that are very passionate about technology, but maybe that's not their core driving perspective of who they are. And when you place them there, they may not necessarily be happy with that position. So we're seeing a lot of technologies that are diving deeper into candidates and what the actual core components of their lives are. And there's some very interesting software that I've stumbled across now a couple times, and I'm just shocked by it, because it's starting to measure people in a much different way and aligning them with the way other people are going to work well with them, and creating these very positive team matrices. And seeing that and looking, and to your point, Ken, the data points, watching how you can actually build a successful team through the use of technology before you even hire somebody, or even knowing if they should be even part of your organization, was mind-blowing to me, because we've used that. Me being a leader, I've always wanted to make sure that I'm an effective leader. So knowing what my strengths are, we did the similar exercise, and recognizing the same leadership teams that we had just by luck built was exactly what this said we would be super successful doing, and we've been really successful by it. And I will say that I think that's going to play a lot into how people hire in the future, is whether or not people work well with them. And I just don't think that that's become mainstream just yet, but watch for that. I think that's going to come out.
Well, I would say as an HR professional, that cuts that cuts very close to a line.
Yes, it does.
Because they've been doing, psychometric testing for decades now. And so, very large companies have done it, and very large companies have been sued for it and had to repeal it because of the bias created.
Understood.
So it's interesting to me, because quite honestly, how do you know that one person's answer to a question, though I know I've designed some of these tests myself, indicative, and do you end up with a group of like me's? So do you end up with groupthink, right? How do you great, you're successful, but boy, could you be more successful if you actually had someone didn't fit perfectly, because they're the challenger, right? They're the ones that make you think outside of your normal thought processes. So as an HR professional, I've used psychometric testing for years, and I've also stopped using it because of the results. So to have AI or technology do it with no interface is actually kind of scary.
Yeah.
I would find that not to be something that I would trust immediately.
On another note, what I'm seeing that's done manually today and not very well in the search process is understanding the candidate's digital twin. how are they operating and thinking and acting on the social media sites, and who really are they? And you see that person at work in their outfit and how they talk, but then all of a sudden at 5 o'clock they become this other person. And where I sense a need for technology down the road is to get first get the manual effort out of it. I got to go dig through the sites and look for people and then read their blogs and all that. I mean, that's terrible. But then also create the algorithms that start to map a person and kind of who they are. Now that might seem a little out of bounds, but it's being done today by humans, and you've got to do it because there are people that are Jekyll and Hydes that you hire that can be scary. But I would just like to have a profile, have some sort of software or tool that gives me a profile of kind of this person's, holistic view. And I know there's a dark side to technology. That's the one problem. I've been in technology 35, 40 years. There's always a dark side. But I think if used properly, we can also get that better fit because I have clients that want a certain work profile, but they also want a certain kind of philosophy profile too. And in private companies, they still have a lot of choice in that regard. But I'd love a software or tool that would help kind of see that digital twin or that social media construct out there.
So I think I stumbled across a company that does that, that goes out there and before you hire, which I know you're going to be like, no, but they're out there.
We're not doing any favors after today.
Well,
Our heart's just going, no.
But they go out there and they look at all your social media and they come back with a profile for the hiring company.
Yeah.
I think there is two things to note there, and I want to just put this in there real quick, is that we are dealing with digital transplants and digital natives, right? So when you're talking about two separate people that live a life outside of the digital means, this is the older Gen X and Gen Y generation, right? And then you got the millennial generation that actually is very aware of their social media and what they're about and their causation and what they're doing and who they are on their social media sites. They're well aware of what that is. So, I mean, where we see this play as two separate people that are very polar opposite in the social media world versus their work lives is starting to turn a little because they're so self-aware on the younger generation that is their life. And I think that you're starting to see some of that. So it may cross at some point, but it may be a while.
But I think also the younger, having 4 children, all of them on social media, just as a parent.
We all have them.
I don't, for my own practices, I don't ever go into people's social media when we're doing backgrounds. We don't ask for that.
Really?
No, not at all. And
heads up, everybody, recruiters do.
we don't.
Oh my God, wow.
I don't. But here's the thing. I think social media is a very curated media.
Yeah.
And so, yes, the younger generation are better at curating, but that doesn't mean that that's really them.
That's true.
They're very good at curating what their media looks like. I have a child who has a professional IG page, and you would think she was the greatest child. Well, she is. She's mine, but...
Careful, she might be watching.
But no, I know the truth. She's 17. There are some dark days, but I love her. But I would say, social media is just a curated vision that people want to see. Maybe the Gen Xers like me may not be so into curating, right? A little more true to who they are. But with the younger ones, I would say I see a lot of curation and a lot of filtering that I don't know necessarily would let us see.
So in the process, because I help hire thousands of people, in some ways I'm using social media to validate what I'm being told. And I see this on the resume, and they said they've done this, and they've been here, and then I go out to their social media, Facebook, well, they never lived there, they never did this. And now all of a sudden I'm going, okay, my 2 data points aren't coming together.
Well, I have done that on LinkedIn. I will say that's the social media I do use.
And that's my point is, and I don't tell anybody you have to use social media or how far you should go. It's just another tool in the toolkit. And again, if you can get that holistic view, because you don't want to make a mishire, you don't want to get it wrong. We want to find the perfect candidate, get them on board, and get them productive as fast as possible. At the same time, if you make that mistake, and I'm just going to say this, I don't know if I created it or who I borrowed it from, but I think the resume is the greatest form of false advertising in the world. I now in interviews, I have to ask 2 questions I never used to have to ask before. And that is everything on your resume? And is everything up to date and accurate? And I will tell you how many times I get no. So you're not working there today, and it says present. Okay, what's missing on your resume? I mean, all of a sudden now the whole interview process opens wide open because they're presenting me this document that's false or misleading or has holes. And now I'm going, all right, now where are we going to go from here? Because I'm putting so much trust in you, and I'm going to allow you into the corporate entity that you're going to have access to passwords and administrative rights, and yet you're lying to me or presenting false information in the interview. We have a problem. And so I need those data points to validate and look up and prove that just because of where we are today. The other thing is title inflation. I found somebody the other day, I was reading through their resume, and
in case you can hear this, everybody in the office is laughing.
You worked for me. I never gave you that title. And all of a sudden they were VP, and I were like barely made director. And my head just exploded because that's where we are. And I think we need more perspectives and more information to make that really smart, intelligent hire. And those people that are gaming it and playing games and aren't forthright, get out of here.
Yep.
Because you burn everybody. Burn you, and they burn you, and they burn everybody. I don't want them. But anyway.
No, I think that's I love that you brought that up. And in fact, Robin and I just had an incident with a candidate that we were working with, and I was just like, oh, rookie mistake, because she actually caught it. And I was like, oh. So, but I promise you, I'm way more careful now. But I submit. So, and I just want to stay with you for a second, Kent, because you are really big on company growth. You just wrote a book about it. You're an expert in scaling companies and stuff like that. So you talk about strategic partnerships enabling the growth and profitability. Yes. And how do you see companies saving time and money by partnering with like recruiting agencies like us?
Yeah. I absolutely encourage those partnerships because I tell people, I don't care where you source the person. I don't care if you use a recruiting agency or not, but you've got to source the talent. The other thing is not just the time and money, it's the risk. You guys help manage the risk so much better than anybody could do it on their own. But they never are able to quantify that, or they're never able to put dollars next to that. But I can tell you exactly, because through certain job designs, I can tell you, when you add a salesperson to your team, you've added 8 categories of cost. You get that wrong, and I'll measure how many of those categories were deployed in those first 6 months or 9 months, and I can go through those opportunity costs and tell you, well, maybe we could have managed the risk if they would have used a professional recruiter who not only helps manage the risk, but you know the background, you might know the history, you'll do the social media checks, you're going to do so much research. And so I tell clients, time and money, but this risk game is so expensive getting it wrong.
Yes.
And I'll just throw some other statistics out there is 98% of all first sales hires fail. And the second ones don't do much better. They rarely ever cover the total categories of cost associated with a salesperson. Although they sell a deal or make quota, that doesn't cover all the costs. And so you represent, I literally ask CEOs, I go, who are your recruiting firms? Who do you have relationships with right now, and contingency or retained? I'm like, you must have relationships because they already know the people you need. Why would you wait, especially a sales hire, why would you wait 6 months or 9 months to try to find that perfect person when they've got their resume right now, and that's 9 months of potential revenue or sales they could be bringing in. So you could be cheap or you could be slow and still get it wrong. Where you guys represent, and I don't know your contracts, but a lot of recruiters I work with, and I work with a lot, is they have guarantees, they have contingencies on so much time in placement. I mean, you've got a lot of things in your agreements today to help manage those risks. Smart business people understand risk. Lower level managers and people that don't get it, they look at price and cost.
Yep.
But you've got to understand about growth and running a successful company, and I'm all about not just explosive growth, but what I call creating business wealth. You can't afford to make those mistakes and take those risks. Let these people that have those connections and know the background, this is their day job, and let them help source and put those people in place. And all of a sudden, great things happen. If there is a mistake, they're going to help cover for you.
Yep, that's right. We'll find the replacement. And it's so interesting that you brought that up because it just brought to mind, like, so many of my candidates that I work with, I don't place them the first time that I engage with them.
Yep.
I may not even place them the second time that I engage with them. But eventually, somebody's going to call me. They're going to say, hey, I need this. I'm like, oh, I know someone. Because that's what we do. And we've already vetted them and built that relationship for years. So I could sit here and talk to you guys all day. This has been such great information, but I'd like to open it up to our audience if anybody has any questions that they'd like to ask. Who's going to be number one? Charles, I saw you.
Yeah, I don't know if it'd be Robin or someone else, but I mean, you talked about you guys are back in the office 100% of the time, and you addressed it as well. But to be able to collaborate and with your teammates and things of that nature, I mean, you've got companies that have built their entire culture around their office, and that's what they say. Hey, what differentiates yourself from your competition? Well, it's our office environment, and so I just somebody's thoughts on. The hybrid model, or are these companies that have built their entire hiring process, or they're separating themselves from the competition by their office environment or their office culture? How do those companies go to a hybrid model or do anything but go back to being in office 100% of the time?
That's a good one.
Well, I'll pick it up after you.
I was going to say my last employer was a company whose culture was that way. We had actually talked about remote, opportunities as a retention tool and as a hiring tool, because in the recruiting process, I was getting so much feedback on the type of positions, and it was pretty embedded into the culture. Our accessibility to our customers, the ability to be quick and very rapid in our decision making, right? And those things were all the things that led us to be, top in class in our industry. And so when COVID hit, we just figured out how to do it without it. I tried to do a proof of concept, even inside the HR department for our CEO and our CFO, and they really were not open to it. And so this was the largest proof of concept ever. They had to design different communication channels. They had to redeploy their salespeople in different methods. There was no longer face-to-face. So the salespeople had to relearn how to market. And they were also an essential business, so they never shut down either. Business went on, and actually business picked up for them because of this. So, we didn't have any great strategies. It was, mother is the necessity necessity is the mother of invention. Thank you. So in that case, we didn't have a plan, but it really shook that culture. We were trying to do it for a variety of reasons, but
I'll give you my perspective, because I do a lot of cultural transformation work, and one of the questions I have for executives is, tell me about your culture, describe it. They usually struggle, or they argue and debate, and I kind of explain it. Well, it's going to be your beliefs, your philosophies, your values. One of these soft areas are going to create your culture. But at the end of the day, your culture is those things that you do to either keep the behavior that you have that you want, or penalize the behavior that you don't want. In essence, that's your culture. And my question becomes then to the executives, how do you control that? How do you manage your culture today? If they don't have an answer, they're going to struggle. And they're going to hope that their culture works for them or they can leverage it. But if they can get their arms around it and become conscious of, well, here's how we actually reward the right behaviors and here's how we penalize the wrong behaviors, once you're able to control that and consciously understand it, then you can leverage it out and you can take it digital, or you could take it into cyber teams and things like that, because you consciously understand it. The problem being is few executives really understand their culture, can explain it, articulate it, and talk about how to manage it.
Yep. There's a great article. It's called Culture Eats Strategy, if you've ever heard of it. And it's really is the next step to that, about talking about how do you utilize culture versus strategy, because strategy is really paperwork, right? And you can have all the best plans, but if your culture doesn't allow for that strategy, it doesn't matter. One or two things are going to happen. You're going to force it through and damage your culture, or you're going to be unsuccessful. So it's great article if you ever find it. Culture Eats Strategy.
Think of culture as gravity, oxygen, temperature. You kind of know it's there, but you don't really think about it. Strategy being your path or position. And so it is the most powerful force you have, and that's why it's so critical to get your arms around it and manage it so you can control it. Otherwise, you get what's called a runaway culture, where you actually have people that start to come in and start to pull your culture in the wrong direction. Not that we ever see that in politics, but that's the kind of thing. So that's a very important and a great question.
Yep. All right, I think we have time for one more question. Any more brave souls out there? Want to ask a question, Trez?
Sure, I will. So going back to the technology piece with video interviews and e-hiring practices, and the different generations that are, being interviewed and on those platforms, do you see some generations doing better in those interviews versus other generations, or
Good question.
kind of just a little bit back to that?
Well, I have my thoughts, but I'm going to let you go first, and then I'll.
Well, I think it's a great question because actually we've had this conversation at my company and with my HR team. To me, it was a little counterintuitive that the younger generation that is so, tech savvy is so bad at interviewing via technology. Yeah. They're incredibly casual. Yeah. And this is a work environment, right? Mm-hmm. Even though we're distant, this is a professional, process you're going through. And they haven't either learned or they don't understand that, being in your pajamas and your hair up in a messy bun and, your cat's running around behind you, the technology. There are filters, blur it out, make it look like you're in Paris, do whatever, but manage it somehow. And, you're incredibly casual in the kind of the interaction. So that was, to me, the biggest surprise when this all started happening, was the one generation I thought would be so much better at this actually turned out to be not so great at it.
I'll agree. I said the same thing in my daughter during the pandemic when it hit. It was an interesting thing for my daughter. She's a manager of a grocery chain, and she came in and asked me, "Why are you always dressing up like you're at home? Why would you continue to do that?" I said, "Because that's what I do. I go to work whether I'm physically in the office or I'm here." And it was interesting for her to just give me this puzzled look, like, "But I'm going to work too, but I wouldn't get dressed like that." And I'm like, "But you would if you were in front of people. There's no difference. Like, you're losing respect for the people that you're in front of if you're not respecting them all the time." And it was interesting, as we've interviewed a multitude of people during the pandemic, you're right. We do see that, there is a level of professionalism in the older generations or, older people that know what going to the office is, and then there are some that are very casual and very, to themselves. And like, if that, it's also the flip side of the coin too, because if they feel like they don't fit, then they really don't give 110% in the interview, which is also an interesting thing to watch for, because you can see it on them, like, oh, well, they're suit and tie people, I don't want to do nothing with that, right? So it's very interesting to watch. And I don't know if you saw that too, but they may be interviewing for that job, but if they see the different look, then they kind of back away. But it's just interesting. You're right. We are seeing the millennial generation become kind of force employers to go their direction versus them adapting to our old hat of wearing a suit and tie direction or adopting our culture. They're creating their own.
So I got thrown off kilter the other day. So I've been interviewing interns from SMU and some of the other colleges, and I definitely want to do a social media interview with Zoom or GoToMeeting or one of those. And I was talking to one of them. I said, when can we set up a interview and video conference? And they wrote back. It was interesting. Can we FaceTime right now?
Oh, wow.
And then I was like, wait, FaceTime? No, we can't do interviews. And right now? No, we can't do it. So and they were like, let's do it right now. Let's do FaceTime. And I'm like, I was really caught off guard. And I didn't mean to feel old. I was just like, no, we can't. No, that's not. It's got to be structured. It's got to be laid out. So it's just interesting how they were like, yeah, let's just do FaceTime right now. Let's talk. And I'm like, okay, I gotta keep morphing myself.
That was awesome. Well, guys, y'all have been awesome, and I thank you so much. But nobody gets out of here without answering our VIP questions. Mm-hmm. So I'm not going to make you all answer all three of them, but I am going to pick on you a little bit. So I think this first question is going to Juan.
Okay.
So if you were chosen to be one of the first colonists on Mars, what 3 things or people would you take with you?
Oh, that's a good one. Obviously, I'm going to probably take my wife. We know there's some life that may have been found on Mars, but not quite yet. So there's not enough oxygen, so we're going to need some air. And I think the third thing I'm going to take, that's a tough one. I think it's going to have to be, I think it's got to be my Bible. That's probably going to be the third thing I take. You know?
Okay.
So
I
stay centered.
I love to see the assumptions people make with that question. It was written very vaguely, intentionally.
Oh, yeah.
You don't know if there's a colony up there. You don't know if there's air up there.
don't.
So you don't know what you need to take. But I love people's answers. Get some interesting ones. Okay, Kent. What is one thing you do each morning to set your day up for success?
This is going to sound really crazy. I'm now a YouTuber. I've been accepted into the YouTube partner program. I have a side business called Intense Glamping. And
I love to glam.
And it's monetized. So go to Intense Glamping on YouTube. It's now monetized, so I get ad revenue and I get affiliate links, and it creates money. And I start every morning. I go into the YouTube management channel and I see all the dancing bars to see how many views, like 3 or 4,000 views today, and then the money and all the other stuff. And that starts my day, and it just gives me this energy about, wow, this is so cool and this is so much fun, and it's so outside corporate. But I love the feedback, the comments about, hey, I've always been a camper, and now you're teaching me about tent glamping, and I love this. And the guy goes, you're a genius. I mean, it just kind of gives me an energy. And my Vistage group was just telling me, they're like, wow, you don't get charged up like that over your book or all the other stuff you do. I said, yeah, there's just this feedback loop and energy that you get. So I start my day looking at my YouTube channel, see how we're doing. And I have an 11-year-old who's like, my dad's a tuber. And he looks at it too, sees how we're doing and what we can talk about and how we can optimize the videos and stuff. So anyway, that just gets me going.
That is awesome.
That and a cup of coffee and I'm going.
Yeah. Intenting?
Intense glamping. So if you think of camping in tents, it's a play on word, intense, all one word, glamping. And it's these air tents that are coming out of Europe, where half the tents over there today don't have metal poles. They have air tubes that you inflate with a bicycle pump or electric pump, and they have windows and zones, and we'll camp for 7-10 days.
Wow.
In weather and cold and stormy and rainy, and you can cook in part of your tent. We entertain in part of our tent. We've had 12 people in one of our tents, and then there's a sleep zone in the back. So Intense Glamping, go right now to YouTube.
Everybody's got their phones out. This is hilarious.
Go to Intense Glamping. I just had a friend at a meeting, and he's from the UK, and he goes, I didn't know about those things. And it's just taking the camping world over by storm. And I started this about 5 years ago, the channel about 2 years ago, and it's just so much fun.
Okay, I just have to say something, Steve. No. No, that's not what I consider glamping. No.
Go to this channel. Your jaw's going to drop because people will say, wow, that's better than an RV home. That's better than the structured place we paid $1,000 a night for.
Wow.
Wait till you see these tents and the layouts and the gear and all that.
That's an original answer to that question.
So that's what gets me going.
Okay, Robin, you get my last VIP question. So if your life's work was being summarized in a news article, what would the headline be?
Well, hopefully it would be, she came, she saw, she made a difference.
Oh, I love that. That just gave me chills. She made a difference. Okay, guys, starting with Juan, how do people find you, connect with you if they want to learn more about you?
Yep, I'm on LinkedIn. Just look up Juan Fernandez on LinkedIn. Be happy to connect with anybody that wants to connect. We'd love to.
And I'm going to recommend that if you're connecting with our panelist on LinkedIn, make sure you send a message. That's a hint. Always do that. Send a message when you're connecting with somebody. And let them know that you saw them on the We Are VIP 100th episode.
Wow.
So, Robin, how do people find you?
Same way, I'm on LinkedIn, Robin Fiddes, and I'd be happy to connect.
Yep.
So revenuegrowthcompany.com, all spelled out, and I have blogs, articles, building teams, and all that. And then my book, 2 chapters on strategic alliances, including recruiters and all that. And then this whole chapter on talent optimization, how you attract, acclimate, develop, and care. to optimize the people that you're bringing on board, the talent. So that book's available through Amazon. Mark Cuban wrote the foreword for it. So,
I forgot to mention that.
Go out and read that book. If you're serious about business success and creating wealth, you want to get on that roadmap. So
Yeah, I believe he said that he wished he'd had that book when he first got started in business.
yeah,
So
that'd be worth what, $10 billion?
Right. Come on now. So, all right, guys, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. And before we wrap up, I just want to say thank you to our managing partners at VIP for having such great forward thinking and insight as to start a podcast. And, you know, here we sit on the 100th episode, and I'd be very remiss if I didn't mention Marissa Bowery, who has been there with me since day one, helping to drive this thing along. And then our producer, Trey Giles, he's around here somewhere. I just couldn't do it without these people, so they keep us going. But for now, I have one more thing to say to you panelists. You are all VIPs.
Oh, thank you.
And that's a wrap for today. Join us next week here on the We Are VIP podcast. We'd love to know how we can help you be a VIP. To find out more, log on to wearevip.com.
VIP party take 100 episodes. We're ready for the next 100. Action! 100 episodes!
Welcome to the We Are VIP podcast.
Action!
Welcome to the We Are VIP podcast, a podcast devoted to adding value to your career or candidate search, brought to you by VIP. Today I am super excited because we are recording our 100th episode. And so we are doing this with a panel of extraordinary experts to talk to you about the future of hiring. So Trey, everybody, come up here. Come up here. So everybody. So Trey has been our producer since episode number 1. And Trey, who are we?
Shaq and Penny.
We're Shaq and Penny. Because we work so well together. And so, we wanted to get you a little something. Aww. So, Mike has one.
I love it. That is hilarious.
And then, in addition to that, because we know you're such a Mavs fan, we wanted to get you this.
Oh, man, that is dope. It's autographed by the team?
Yeah.
That's crazy. I appreciate y'all. Thank y'all so much.
On behalf
Thank y'all so much. I appreciate it.
More than that, I can.
Come on.
I don't like attention.
I know you don't, but too bad. So I have to tell the story of how Marissa got here. So Marissa was hired. We'd already scheduled our production meeting with Real News.
Quiet on the set.
This is important. This is about Marissa. So anyway, we'd already scheduled our production meeting to start talking about our podcast. We had nothing in the works at the time. Marissa shows up. It's her first day, which also happens to be the day of our first production meeting. And I'm like, don't you think Marissa should go with us? And the guys are like, yeah, that's probably a good idea. Thank God. I could not have done this without her. And so in appreciation, because this isn't just me doing the 100th, this is you and Trey and the partners and everybody, we got you a little gift.
Thank you so much. That's so sweet. I appreciate that. I hate attention.
So, all right, you're
You
done.
guys have no idea how much Marissa does. She's amazing.